Hello, my friend, it's Gina. Thank you for continuing the long journey in the effort to find justice for Elizabeth. This is an account that's based on a true story, one that, as of this recording, remains ongoing. Welcome back to Lost Sister, a Discarded Woman, Episode 12. Content warning: this and future episodes contain sensitive topics and may cause distress to some listeners. Hearing disturbing actions of oppression, manipulation, and abuse can bring up painful memories, personal struggles, and trauma for many. Narrator's note: the names have been changed and places are purposefully arbitrary to protect the privacy of those involved. This podcast is our way of telling Catherine and Elizabeth's story so that others can be aware of potential future issues. The central figures in our story include Catherine, her sister Elizabeth, Elizabeth's husband Walter, and Walter's granddaughter Darcy. Additional figures: Elizabeth's elder brother and current guardian Charles, the attorney who represents Elizabeth's family, Alex, and Sam, the assistant county attorney. Let's recap episode 11. In the last episode, our discussion focused on fraud, even though all of us, regardless of age, where we live, or the size of our bank account, is open to theft by fraudulent means. Identity theft is rampant and growing, and we all need to seriously take measures to protect ourselves. According to the Federal Trade Commission, Americans reported losing $10 billion to fraud in 2023. That's $1 billion more than the year before. It's the highest loss ever reported to the FTC. And that's just the cases reported. An estimated 1 in 10 elderly Americans are abused each year. In NASDAQ's 2024 Global Financial Crime Report, $77.7 billion of all reported global fraud was linked to elderly victims. We talked about how older people with dementia are particularly susceptible to abuse overall. In addition to being dependent upon others for assistance, elders with dementia are more likely to experience deficits in memory, communication, and judgment that make it harder for them to identify, prevent, and even report mistreatment. As we continue with our story, everything seems to have ground to a halt. Even Sam has stopped returning Catherine's calls and emails. Why? Nobody knows. There's little local gossip coming from the courthouse these days, but speculation is that there are some internal shakeups happening. All Catherine and the family can hope is that when things settle down, Sam will come out fine and unfazed, and maybe everything will turn out to be in their favor. One point is very clear. Darcy's latest attorney is stalling. Alex received a suggestion from that attorney that Charles, as Elizabeth's guardian, might consider offering a compromise to Darcy. A specific amount of money for Elizabeth. In exchange, the family would not proceed with any potential civil lawsuit, and this attorney would present that offer to Darcy. Even though this latest attorney did not specifically state an amount, the impression was that it could be in the neighborhood of half of the original estate. Now, I'll admit that when this came to light, my first reaction was bullshit. That's ludicrous. Why Darcy should have any of the assets that, by rights and per this state's laws, is obscene and insulting. Of course, I'm not an attorney or a negotiator, just an interested, maybe just nosy, bystander. Someone who has come to feel very protective of Elizabeth and anybody else in the same situation. But Alex encouraged Charles to think about it and for him to discuss it with the family. Charles took the advice, and after much discussion, the consensus was that they wanted Alex to press Darcy's attorney, not just if she really was open to it, but what kind of amount were they thinking? That bird in the hand thing can be the best many times. Maybe if Darcy is willing to compromise and give Elizabeth at least half of the assets, the family would at least be able to take care of Elizabeth for the rest of her days comfortably. So, Alex proceeded to loosely negotiate with the attorney. After many weeks of no real answers, they all determined that either the attorney was just on a fishing expedition with only a hope that maybe Darcy could be reasoned with, or it was just another stall tactic. Whatever it was, it sure sounds like this latest attorney of Darcy's is likely very aware of the misappropriation of funds and is trying to keep her from as much legal damage as possible. It seems to Catherine that as of now, she's exhausted every avenue possible for potential criminal charges against Darcy, which is what they want, to retrieve as much of Elizabeth's assets as possible. And so far, that has been to no avail. Now, once again, as a reminder, Darcy had gifted a relatively small amount out of the entire assets that she now has complete control of. Assets that were, in my humble opinion, quite obviously misappropriated, for lack of a nicer terminology. During many discussions of how to proceed, Alex has explained to the family that a civil lawsuit might be their only other avenue to at least attempt to recover any of Elizabeth's assets, which there seems to be no doubt that money is going to be needed within a year or so. As we look towards the inevitable civil lawsuit, let's reference a case that at least some of us would remember, one with somewhat similar circumstances. The O.J. Simpson trial comes to mind. In that particular case, the state brought charges against Mr. Simpson, but he was later acquitted by a jury. The family of Nicole Brown Simpson, the victim, moved ahead with a civil case, which they eventually won. Now, the difference between a criminal case and a civil lawsuit is this. The state, whether it's the county, the actual state itself, or federal, should believe they have a solid case built to convict the accused, or the potential to build the case to convict, which is what the county attorney, the district attorney, and the state attorney are saying to Catherine and Elizabeth's family, as demonstrated by their inactions. Because of their disregard on Elizabeth's behalf, her family made the decision to proceed with a civil lawsuit against Darcy. In the case of a civil lawsuit, there is a lesser burden of proof necessary for a conviction, and in this state, there are two choices for a civil lawsuit. No doubt, I'm sure that everybody knows what a jury trial is. But it can take months or even years to just get scheduled for a jury trial. Plus, it is reasonable to predict that a jury might, just might, fail to find guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. People have their own circumstances, beliefs, prejudices, etc., and can be swayed by an attractive, even pitiful defendant. The alternative to a jury trial is called a bench trial. This type of trial is where the plaintiff, which is going to be Elizabeth, represented by Alex, will lay out their arguments, evidence, testimonials, and rebuttals directly to the judge. The defendant, namely Darcy, representative to be determined, will rebut the plaintiff's case and may submit their own evidence. The judge weighs all of the evidence presented and will make the verdict themselves. Of course, we all hope that all of our judges are not swayed by an individual, but instead are more interested in justice and the law, which is exactly what Catherine and her siblings agreed to do. We're going for a bench trial. Here's just a few steps Alex will take to move forward. The first step is to place liens on the two properties that appear to be connected to Walter, Elizabeth, and through the assets Darcy acquired after Walter's death, which include the house Walter purchased and lived in, and of course the big house, the one Darcy purchased for well over $750,000 in cash. It means obtaining copies of the deeds and filing the lien process paperwork to the court. Liens against these properties mean that Darcy can't sell the properties while a lien is in place. It also makes it very difficult to take a loan against the property as well. Property records are usually fairly easy to find online if you know the full name of the property owner and or the property address. Now, you can search the Google machine for the county or state for the property record research. It's also a good idea to see if the individual has a company recorded with the state, like an LLC or limited liability corporation. That information can be searched the same way with Google. Search for the name of the state and add this, LLC search or business search. Once you find the website, look for either the name of the company, even if you only have a word or two of the company name, or the registered agent. That's the owner's name. You do need at least the owner's last name. And normally, the search will include names similar. For example, if you search for Smith, more than likely, the search will also include all Smith, whether it has an I or a Y. I'll also mention that anyone can buy property in their own name or under their company, of course in their own state, but in other states as well. And a lot of the states have property searches only by county, which takes a lot of time. But it's important, very important. Real estate is notoriously a relatively simple way to hide assets. Tie the money up in real estate. Now, all of these searches take time and patience. If you ever find yourself needing this kind of information, your attorney will probably do the research, but you're going to pay for their time. You can offer to do the research yourself if the attorney is agreeable, but please make sure you are very clear on who is taking on that responsibility before beginning. For a successful lawsuit, an overall plan has to be set. Of course, the best laid plans can change, and most likely will as time goes along. In this case, the consensus is to set the goal at half of the assets that Walter and or Darcy manipulated away from Elizabeth. Now, this is in the neighborhood of about $5 million. Even though Elizabeth, by law, should have been entitled to the entire amount. It will be easier to ask the court for spousal half. And I use the term easier very loosely. Nothing associated with this case is easy. Alex will also set up depositions for witnesses. A deposition is a recorded, sworn statement made by a witness before a trial. It's part of the discovery process, which helps gather information and prepare their claims and defense. Depositions can be used to fact-check a witness's testimony, especially if the witness contradicts statements or facts given in the deposition. As of this recording, the only witness Alex has on the list to depose is Darcy. Personally, I had high hopes for a long list of the people involved, including Darcy's attorney, who had previously worked for the bank that obstructed Catherine from any information, statements, etc., from Elizabeth's Guardian bank account. That attorney, again, in my opinion, should have to answer the question revolving around the missing funds that were eventually and begrudgingly handed over to Elizabeth's new Guardian account. But it was about $24,000 short. The attorney who revised Walter's will has already been deposed. Remember now, depositions are taken under oath, just like if you were in a courtroom. If Alex calls that attorney to testify at the bench trial, answering on the stand about Walter's mental state at the time of him signing the will, could be really interesting and likely to be damning to the attorney. Like we've talked about before, it's unheard of that someone dies from vascular dementia who hasn't had it for years. The likelihood that the stroke Walter had 15 years ago was the catalyst to the dementia is extraordinarily high. This attorney's deposition could be a real issue for them now that there's evidence of Walter's death certificate stating that the cause of his death was vascular dementia, a scant 4 months after the new will was signed. And the will attorney stated in the deposition that Walter was just fine, physically fine, and mentally sharp. Boy, oh boy, was that a load of crap. And one more thing. The detective has assured Catherine that even though Charles, as Elizabeth's guardian, and the family are pursuing a civil lawsuit against Darcy, Elizabeth's case remains open. This detective refuses to give up. So, the case is an active investigation, even though there's nothing new to report right now. Not only locally, but by the FBI as well. Both the detective and Catherine have now been contacted by the FBI agent that has been assigned to Elizabeth's case. Oh my God, folks. Now, maybe, just maybe, we're going to get somewhere. Join us soon for episode 13, Lost Sister, a Discarded Woman. Nothing worthwhile is ever easy. Abuse in all forms is an equal opportunity instrument of control, regardless of age, gender, IQ, education, or socioeconomic status. Whatever your age, for your own sake and those who care about you, please establish a living will. Keep it somewhere your chosen caretakers can access it. And if you don't have your assets in order, make plans right now to do so. Talk to an attorney and/or an investment institution you trust and make it happen before it's too late. The terms elder abuse, elder neglect, and elder fraud are relatively new. In general, elder abuse is a term referring to any knowing, intentional, or neglectful act by a caretaker or any other person that causes harm or a serious risk of harm to a vulnerable elderly person. Legislators in all 50 states have passed some form of elder abuse prevention laws. A good place to start for more information is the website justice.gov/elderjustice. And if you suspect elder abuse, there is help. The National Elder Fraud Hotline is 1-833-FRAUD-11. That's 833-372-8311. A fantastic resource is the National Center on Elder Abuse website, ncea.acl.gov. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is 1-800-799-SAFE. That's 800-799-7233. Some states offer a scam alert that you can sign up for online. To find out if your state offers one, use the Google machine to search for your state's Scam Alert program. To report identity theft, you can contact the Federal Trade Commission at identitytheft.gov or call 1-877-438-4338. It's also suggested to contact the fraud department at your credit card issuer, bank, and other places that you have your accounts. These links and phone numbers are also located on the Lost Sister webpage, lostsister.buzzsprout.com. Please also follow our Facebook page, Lost Sister, a Discarded Woman podcast. I hope you continue following as Elizabeth, Catherine, and their family persist in their struggles. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, follow, and share with your friends and family. By gaining a wider audience, we hope to bring attention to not only Elizabeth and Catherine's story, but to shine an enormous light on all domestic abuse, elder abuse, domestic violence, and elder fraud. More must be done to protect the vulnerable in our society. The hope is by sharing Elizabeth and Catherine's story, it might help others to avoid the same happening to them or someone they love. Thank you.